So let me say something first about transmission. Actually, what I want to talk to everybody about is lazy days. One of the great hidden Thich Nhat Hanh teachings. Yeah, so let me talk about transmission in a way that makes sense to people who aren't even interested in transmission. Because I think the concept is really central to anybody who wants to change, make a significant change in their life. And when I'm talking about change, I don't mean like an outer change, like a geographical change, or changing a job, or changing a relationship, but changing just how we are. So in the Buddhist tradition, transmission means transmitting the what are called the 3 jewels and the 5 mindfulness trainings. And the transmission goes back to the Buddha. So it's something that's been transmitted generation after generation since the time of the Buddha, when the Buddha began to teach and people began to follow him, and people said, we really want to, how can we more closely identify ourselves with you? And so he developed this little ceremony, which is I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha, and then taking what are called the 5 mindfulness trainings or the 5 precepts, which are sort of fundamental ethical, moral guidance, kind of stop creating bad karma, kinds of things. Yeah, so this is very important, right? If we are not well, well, we can do 2 things. Actually, I'm just thinking, we can start Googling, which I think is people do. I mean, originally people said, well, you go to see the doctor. You're not well, you go to the doctor. But these days, there's something we do before we see the doctor, right? We Google, right? And then, so we sort of kind of treat ourselves, right? I think that's a lot what goes on these days. But if that doesn't work, you go see the doctor. Why do we go see the doctor? Because hopefully the doctor, he or she, knows how to get us well. That's why we go to them. So the analogy is, don't take this personally, but psychologically, emotionally, cognitively, we are not well. Why? How do we know we're not well? Because we're not happy. We don't have consistent well-being in our mind. Our mind is not at peace. Our mind is not open and loving and caring and patient. All those good qualities. It's often guarded, it's often wounded, all those things. So our minds are not well. And we want to be well. So we can either, Google, listen to this one, listen to that one, or we can go to the doctor who knows how to heal us. I mean, to me, that's the simplest way. So taking refuge in the Buddha is taking refuge in the teacher as someone who can guide us from ill health to health. Right? It's like when we go on a long journey or a hike or something, that's complicated. Yeah, we'd like to go with somebody who's done the journey, knows the way, and knows how to help and support us. Now, with our bodies, it's a little more obvious, but the trouble with our minds is inside ourselves. We have this sense that I know how to get myself out of this, right? And so many of us have spent a lot of time going here, going there, reading this, doing that, listening to this, and yet we find we are still what? Stuck in many of those long-term patterns. Okay. So, to take refuge in the Buddha means I take refuge in this enlightened teacher, the Buddha, who really understood the nature of mind and has continually passed on that journey through teachers to this time. That's taking refuge in the Buddha. Taking refuge in the Dharma is that whole body of teachings of all types and meditative practices of all types that you practice. Okay, so if the teacher is the doctor, right, the Dharma, the teachings, the practices are the medicine, right? So if you have a teacher, if you have a doctor, even a good doctor, and prescribes the medicine for you, or whatever the regimen is to get better, you have a chance of getting better. Right. But again, oftentimes we think we know better, don't we? So we take the medicine the way we want. We take it, we don't take it, we just think we know everything. But if we know everything, then why do I still suffer? You see, it's an interesting question. It's like when I used to, deal with people who were smokers. They'd like, all they do is get, every time they see their pulmonologist, they get worse and worse information, and yet it somehow doesn't. They don't get that. Maybe it's the cigarettes. You know what I mean? It's like the way you're living that's causing this problem. So we have a great ability as human beings to live in denial, to obfuscate, to parse, to, just not get the message. So to take refuge in the Buddha, to take refuge in the Dharma, and then the third one is to take refuge in the Sangha. Sangha is community. Like, I'm not in this alone. I have support. I have other people who are working the way I'm working, And so the three of them together, and again, I'm not pushing transmission, I want you to understand that. But I'm saying whoever you are and whatever spiritual path you're on and whatever transformation you want to occur, you need all three. Right? You need some body of wisdom that's been experienced, that's tried and true, that you can trust, that you can take refuge in. Like, this is where I go. When things are stormy, this is where I go. We need this. Okay. So, formally, in the Buddhist tradition, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. Again, this is not exclusive. This doesn't mean you can't read anything else or do anything else. But this means generally, I've checked it out. And I'm ready to make that commitment to my own, it's really to my own healing and transformation, and knowing that I need these aspects of my life to make it happen. Now, we have a problem as Americans. You know what that is? We have a problem around commitment and trust, or maybe it's trust and commitment. Has anybody been aware of that? As a therapist, trust, commitment. And I could go on and on about, how we've been wounded in those areas. Yeah, but, At some point, for many people, especially younger people, I don't know if this is the right expression anymore, playing the field gets old. Right? And you want to find a person that you trust, that you can commit to, so you can create a wholesome relationship with, right? At a certain point, people, playing the field of spirituality is so easy these days. You know, the internet, and I mean, and every block there's something else, and everybody's a teacher, and and at a certain point you play the field, that's good, you learn, you get experience, but at a certain point you want to be able to commit, settle down, and just work it. Right? And so, so it's like that, my friends. Whatever spiritual path you do. Yeah, so we have a ceremony, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha, and then we have these 5 mindfulness trainings, which are just, and you can read about them, they're just, in Buddhism we talk about body, speech, and mind. Of the 3, mind is the hardest to change, as you might have noticed, right? Mind is the hardest. Body and speech are the easiest. Because I could be thinking any nonsense up here, but I can control my mouth and I can control my body. That's not good. I've made a commitment not to do that. It's not good. So having those kinds of guidelines for our conduct has very positive effect for many of us because because they're really helpful in letting us see that certain kinds of behaviors with the body, certain kinds of things that you say with the mouth, cause suffering. Suffering to me, suffering to others. And I can see that, and I can stop that. Even though my mind still may be saying the same old thing. I mean, that's what the meditative practice is, to change the mind. But we don't have to wait to change our life, right? So this is important. So anyhow, on March 23rd, there will be here, everybody can observe it, there'll be a transmission ceremony, and the only criteria I have, it's for members, the only criteria I have is that anybody who's interested, there'll be on one, you can go to the website, there'll be 2 preparatory classes, 1 live and 1 online, and that's because I want people to understand what they're getting into, I want people to have opportunity to ask questions, and people can attend the class without taking transmission. Okay, so that's just an opportunity to learn and ask questions, and you can go online and register for those, and the transmission that I will do with those interested will be live. So this is for people in the hall, including teenagers, 13 and older, and anything else? Any questions about that before I get to the matter at hand? Any questions about refuge or transmission or why? I mean, I'm open to questions. This means it's all clear. Nobody thinking, he's trying to get us to join a cult, or what's he up to up there? So this is ancient. The interesting thing about this, and the interesting thing is, as opposed to other paths, nobody is ever asked, what's your religion? Nobody is told, to take refuge, you have to give up ... That's not Buddhism. So one can be practicing this and that and also take refuge. That's not a problem in Buddhism. So it's people who come out of other traditions where you're either in or out. This is not that. Buddhism is very open. It just wants to be of benefit. Okay. So any questions? Yes?
Did Thich Nhat Hanh start the tradition of transmission to people that are lay people?
No. This goes back to the Buddha. Yeah. So just to answer your question about the Thich Nhat Hanh, no, this goes back to the Buddha. So in the Buddhist tradition, Now I'm talking about the big formal Buddhist tradition of hundreds and millions and 2,600 years. They're actually, so we call this an ordination, right? So basically what I'm actually doing is called lay ordination. Right? So there are 4 classes, within the Buddhist community there are 4 classes of practitioners. There are monks and nuns, and they have hundreds of precepts. They lead very circumscribed lives. They're monks and nuns. They're celibate. They live apart. Okay. So those are 2 of them, monks and nuns. They're called bhikkhus and bhikshunis. Then there are lay people like us, upasakas and upasikas. So this is for lay people, and this goes back to the Buddha's time. Yeah, there have always been lay followers of the Buddha. Any other questions? Good. So what I really want to talk about today is lazy days. Anybody ever hear of a lazy day? If you had, just raise your hand. Can I ask a question? In our American culture, is laziness something that we uphold? That we're encouraged to be? Actually, is it considered sort of a sin to be lazy? Yes and no, yeah. So, yeah. So I first encountered, so I don't think they were called lazy days then. So when I first met Thich Nhat Hanh in 1975 in Paris, we was living with a small group of people, and they were very busy, primarily organizing around political issues related to Vietnam and ending the war, as well as mostly involved with communicating. He was in exile, communicating with his followers, organizations in Vietnam, because there was great hardship, and the Buddhist community was organized, especially his communities, to help people. Orphans, feed people. So they were very busy with raising money, sending food, I mean, all kinds of stuff, and very involved with kind of European, mostly, religious NGOs who were very generous. So very busy, and always getting letters from Vietnam that were just getting worse and worse, the news, right? So, working very hard. And the load of the work was overwhelming. You know what I mean? It was all bad news. It was all desperation. It was all, can you help me? And okay. And then, one day a week, they just stopped. I mean, all this stuff to do, they just put it down. What'd they do? They got up late. They got up when they wanted to get up. They just had a lazy, relaxing day. Didn't do any work. Meal preparation, very slow and meditative. Took extra time bathing. Cleaned the apartment. Very slowly and mindfully. People drank tea together and talked together. Did some reading. Go for a walk in the park. Make a nice meal. Together, everybody. Practice meditation a little bit. Read a little bit. Napped a little bit. Talked together quite a bit. Sang. Played music. Very sweet day. Thich Nhat Hanh thought it was essential to have he called it a lazy day, where we put down all our doing and focused on just being. People all know the difference between doing and being. Americans, we are what? Human doers, right? to be, that human beings, actually we're called human beings, aren't we? Have we changed the name yet? Are we called human doers? I think we're still called human beings, right? Humans who be. And he felt that, and I'm going to read you some quotes and stuff, but he felt that being was, so I was very struck with that, because for most of us, we'll be like, there's work to be done. Can't take any time off, right? Got to get it all done. But he knew there was no end to it. And he knew that the person who was doing all this, and they were all doing good work, to be balanced as a human being, had to be able to come back to themselves, had to come back to life, and just be present to it. And to do that, they had to put down their work, they had to put down their doing, and the way they did things, to just have a day of being, right? So, and then when I first visited him in the early 80s, when he established Plum Village, it was very small then, just a couple of people, he had sort of instituted, I think that's when he started calling them lazy days, because there were more people around. And it basically was the same thing for the whole community, right? Let me read you some quotes from Thich Nhat Hanh. The lazy day is kind of a drastic measure against habit energy. Does everybody know what we're talking about? Does everybody know they're doing habit energy? Anybody not know they're doing habit energy? That do, accomplish, are things to do? Right? To-do lists? We don't have to-be lists, do we? No, we only have to-do lists. The lazy day is a kind of drastic measure against habit energy. On lazy days, you refrain. You do your best in order to refrain from trying to do something. You try to do nothing. It's hard. It's hard. But we have to learn. We have to open up to start a new civilization. Because we have the tendency to think in terms of doing and not in terms of being. So this is quintessential Thich Nhat Hanh. He looked at the modern world, and by then he had come to the West, right? He had had opportunities to come to the West, but he had grown up in a very traditional culture in Vietnam. Not that there wasn't doing, but there was also more being. He was a small village, agricultural, and he had seen this crazy world of ours, right? And he had actually was very concerned when he, in the 60s and 70s, when he encountered overseas Vietnamese who would sort of come. There were many overseas Vietnamese in France because of the relationship of France with Vietnam, and then when he came to America, there were many overseas Vietnamese in America, and he saw how quickly they had become human doers, and we're beginning to have all the problems, depression, anxiety, family problems, all those kinds of things, addiction problems, were already entering the culture. And he felt it was very much because people had forgotten how to be. And when you say be, it's like be who you are, really. But if you don't stop doing and you just define yourself in terms of your doing, how are you ever going to know who you really are if you don't stop? So he says, and again, he used that word civilization, which sounds very strong, but he was a big thinker, He really wanted, these teachings that he was sharing to create a new kind of ethos among human beings that they could return to themselves, because it's when they don't return to themselves and they live in the world of doing and activity and endlessly thinking, life becomes more and more problematic. And unfortunately, all that doing, and we all know that world of doing is the world we live in, does not create healthy, well-adjusted human beings. It creates many of the kind of human beings that we have today. And this is all pre-social media. This is pre-device. This is his writings from the 70s and 80s. I mean, if he was writing today, what he would say, right? Again, the ability of people to never stop doing, consuming, responding, reacting, everything so quick. We don't connect with human beings. We text. Anyhow, because we tend to think of doing now in terms of beings. Many of us are overscheduled. Even our children are overscheduled. We keep thinking that by keeping busy, we'll satisfy ourselves. But our constant busyness is one of the reasons we suffer from stress and depression. A lazy day is a day for us to be without any scheduled activity. We let the day unfold naturally, timelessly. We may do walking meditation on our own with a friend, do sitting meditation in the forest. We may read lightly or write home to a family or friend. It can be a day for us to look more deeply in our lives and our practice, our relations with others. We may learn a lot about how we have been practicing. We may recognize what to do or what not to do in order to be more in harmony with our practice. This is a day to balance ourselves. It's a quiet day for everyone. Now again, this is not, we have in our own Judeo-Christian traditions, Judeo-Christian traditions, we have the day of what? What? The Sabbath, which is supposedly what? A day of rest. A day of not working. A day devoted to, looking at spiritual matters and personal matters and having, a big meal with your family. You know what I mean? It's so this idea of having one day a week to nourish yourself with something different from work and that work cannot nourish you is in our culture traditionally too. I mean, for those of us ancient enough, liquor stores used to be closed when? On Sundays. Lots of places were closed on Sunday. Can you believe that? Yeah, you had to get everything done, yeah. Because Sunday was a day of rest. Sunday was a day of contemplation. Sunday, this is the tradition. When we do not have something to do, we get bored. We think for something to do entertainment. We're afraid. Have you ever noticed that meditation, just sitting 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, is not a comfortable experience? Anybody ever had that experience? Want to admit it? That we're bored? That we get restless? Why do you think that is? Yeah, why do you think just sitting sounds so benign? Come on, sit down for 20 minutes. Just relax. You don't have to think of anything. Just sit there. I'm sure if you tell your friends what you're doing today, and they God, why would you do that? Right? We have people who come here on silent retreats, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, and they say their friends or family tell them, torture. What? What, you don't have your devices, you can't, what, you're in silence? Torture. Why is that torture for us? Because we've lost the ability just to be and to enjoy just being alive and be present to life. There was a time for each of us when we were little. Do you remember being little, or if you're just around little kids? What do you notice about them? They're not bored. It's like when they get to be, 7, 8, or 9, then they learn about being bored, because already we've given them so much stimulation. But little kids have a great capacity to what? What? Entertain themselves. Right? They can go into the kitchen cabinets and just pull out the things and be in heaven. Right? You know what I'm saying? They can, they can just be. They can be themselves, and they're okay. And we all used to be like that. We all used to be able to be and be okay just being. But we have revved ourselves up to such degrees that even stopping for 5 minutes is torture. Right? Because these days, when we have a 2-minute break, when nothing's going on, what do? What? Right? Think about that. Not even a minute before we're what? Checking our email, checking this, checking that. Now, we may be able to kind of rationalize, well, I'm just trying to keep in touch with, I just want to... What we're talking about here is what that is doing to our minds. This is the bigger question. Am I clear? So, if we go case by case, I want to know what's going on in politics. I want to know what our president's up to. I want to know how this is going on. I want to know. I'm texting with the so and so. I want to find out what's going on. We're all like, who do we think we are these days? Everything we do is so important. All our communication is like down to the minute. Are our lives really a matter of, a life or death decision? There may be some people here who are involved in life or death decision. Please check your day. This is not the time just to be and relax. But it's all just gotten out of whack. But when you're in it, it seems what? Important and normal. Normal because I'm habituated to it, and normal because everybody else is doing it. It's become the norm for our society. Is that true? Yeah. And yet, we don't relate, which what Ty is trying to do, we don't relate to this whole way of incapacity to be, and incapacity to be alone with ourselves, and this endless need for stimulation with anxiety, depression, addictions, It's like, is there a relationship? Where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? And maybe it's coming from the way I'm leading my life. And you know what, my friends? That's good news. You know why? I can't change everybody else, can I? No. But I can't change myself when I see the way I'm conducting my life is not healthy for me in the short run and the long run, or for those around me. Therefore, lazy days. Thich Nhat Hanh, I don't know if he always did, but I remember he was telling me, he'd say, Fred, I'm a lazy monk. And you know what? He was very proud. Actually, I was reading, one of his monks said that he was joking about, how the Dalai Lama is called His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Thich Nhat Hanh said, I'd like to be called His Laziness. His royal laziness. Now, if you know anything about Thich Nhat Hanh, right, author of hundreds of books, the world-known, figure, endlessly teaching, founded all these monasteries, very productive. And yet he was lazy. Right? Because the way he did his doing was from a deep sense of being. That's the trick. That's the trick. So, ideally, we would like the being to enter our doing life. Is that clear? But because we are neophytes at this, first we need to have a day of being so we can get used to it. Thai would give his monastics, Thich Nhat Hanh would give his monastics little kind of silly things, which aren't silly at all, like, in their Vietnamese tradition, hammocks, swinging and laying in the hammocks in the villages and stuff like that. So he would have, what he had people do? You have to go in the hammock for 1 hour and you can't do anything. You can't read, you can't, just sit in the hammock, lay in the hammock, and just be. You can look around, you can listen, and many of his monastics these days, are American or Vietnamese American, so they're very, a lot of them are young, so torture. But he wanted them to see you could survive, and all of a sudden you could begin to notice that you're alive, that you're breathing, that there's a sky, that there's sun, that there's bird sounds, that there's, right? There's being. But we can't we can't experience that reality for ourselves unless we're willing to do these experiments, right? So coming to meditation is an experiment, right? I'm not going to ask you for public disclosure, but how'd you do today? How'd you do? Doing nothing. Just sitting there. Right? Sitting quietly, walking quietly. Does that sound like a big deal? And yet, how many people found it challenging? You don't have to raise your hand. How many people found it challenging, difficult, uncomfortable? That's because, we're just not used to that. It's not because it's uncomfortable, it's because we're not used to it. You know anything about addiction? Addicts find not being high uncomfortable. Not doing their life on drugs very uncomfortable. Why is that? Because they only get their comfort from drugs, alcohol. Right? So when an addict stops using, they have to learn how to live a life without a substance, don't they? Now, most people who go into recovery report, gee, my life is better. Right? Celebrities, aren't they saying that all the time? Right? For those who don't believe your friends, even celebrities say that. My life is better. But at the time, I didn't think so. I thought I was living the life. Right? But when you get to the other side, you realize, I wasn't living the life. This is living the life because now they're alive. Now they're dealing with life. And they're learning how to enjoy life, enjoy relationships that they couldn't before when they figured they needed something. So I think it's very important, as we bring, mindfulness, meditation, Buddhist teachings into our culture, that we realize that it's more difficult than in past cultures. I've lived with Tibetans, just ordinary people. Space, time, you spend the day herding yaks. You're basically what? Alone. In nature. Being. Right. Working the rice paddies. Right. Peaceful. Hard work, but you see, our life is so stimulating. First thing you get up in the morning, what do? What? Turn on TV or see, you're old-fashioned. See, she said she turns on the TV. I said she's old-fashioned. Most people what?
Check your phone.
What? Check your phone. Where's your phone?
Next to you.
Next to you. You take it into your bedrooms. Not good. Got to create a little physical distance, right? And it's so tempting, right? So easy. So again, Thich Nhat Hanh was very aware of our culture and the trends in it, and he really was somebody trying to call us back from the ledge. It's interesting, he used the word, we have to open up, we have to start a new civilization. If we read the news, do we get the sense as we look at our world and what's going on in the world that we're living in a time of a very highly developed, advanced civilization? You know what I'm saying? And I'm not just talking about, technological advances, right? That's about the material world. I'm talking about civilization, human beings, how they are as individuals, how they are with each other, right? That's civilization. So he wanted to kind of bring people back to creating another kind of civilization. So his whole sense of community, remember we talked about coming back to transmission, the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Sangha are those that practice the Buddha Dharma. Right. Buddha, Dharma are more abstract. Sangha are real people who are practicing the Buddha Dharma, people practicing the spiritual path. We're the ones who have to create the new civilization. How do we do that? By changing our minds, by living a value-laden life, by relating with each other in a kind, open, caring, compassionate way. Right? Isn't that what it's about? So, creating a new civilization sounds incredibly grandiose. I don't know what Thai was thinking, creating a new civilization. But he was very humble. I always felt that he always, while he had big dreams, big expectations for humanity, he always began with the individual. You want a peaceful world, become a peaceful person. You want a nonviolent world, eliminate violence from yourself. Right? You want a loving world, become a loving person. So that's where it begins. So I really want to encourage our community going forward, and people who aren't members of the community, to begin to reflect on a lazy day and bring it into your life. I'm seeing Brian over here. Brian does this thing where you email Brian on a certain day and you get back a message that says what?
I'm off of the computer.
He's off of the computer today. He's having a non-device day. Can you believe him? It's not a national holiday. He's just taking a non-device day. For starters. Thich Nhat Hanh never talked about, but that's, So it has to be structured. I mean, it's an unstructured day, but you need to structure it in the sense that, people in your life know today's a lazy day. Today's not a doing day. Right? I don't have a to-do list today. You can have a to-be list today. I want to be in nature today. I want to connect with friends today. And I don't mean texting. I don't even mean emailing. You know what I'd like to suggest? Direct contact. Or at least phone call, hearing their voice. Texting is just what? Print. It's very cold. It's not a warm media. Have you noticed that? It's not a warm media. We're just shooting words at each other. I think that's why people love social media, right? Because they can just say any damn thing they want. Because they're not with the person. People get away with lots of stuff. We need to, call somebody. Call somebody you haven't connected with in a while. Right? Invite friends over for tea, or whatever you like to do, or coffee, or let's go for a walk, or let's enjoy each other. Come, let's play music, or let's go dance. You know what I mean? Things you enjoy. A day off from doing. I mean, cleaning house, for many people it's a what? Chore. They clean their house, they don't like to do it. Imposition. Enjoy it. Sweeping, vacuuming, cleaning off cupboards, it's sweet work. It's like washing, like we take care of our bodies, we take care of our homes. Just kind of, I'm just taking care of myself today. Write poetry, I don't know, what do you like to do? That nourishes you. And the other important thing that Thai was very clear with. So in Buddhist meditation, we have what's called samatha and we have what's called vipassana. Samatha is what we did this morning. It's basically where you single-mindedly concentrate an object, like we concentrated on our body, on our breath. And the purpose of that type of meditation is calming the mind. Thai called samatha, this kind of meditation, he called it stopping. Interesting. He was creative. So he called it stopping. He sort of gave it a modern, because he said we need to be able to stop. Does everybody know what that means? Just close your eyes. You know that mind, it never stops? Everybody know that mind? Thoughts, feelings, perceptions, ideas, the reactivity, it just keeps going all the time. And we're endlessly reacting to it. It doesn't stop. We need to stop. Why do we need to stop? So we can step back and look at our life and ask simple questions. Is it working for me? How am I? When people get together these days, people tell each other what? What they've been doing. Have you noticed that? Let me tell you what I've been doing today. Well, that's great. But you know what I'm really interested? How are you? How is the person doing all the doing? What's it like to be that person? That's a different question, isn't it? So, a lazy day is an opportunity also to take some time to ask yourself, how am I doing as a being? The one who's been doing all these things this week, how is he or she? And that's a very different experience. And it gets very real. I also suggest that we do that with other human beings. Well, that's great. Sounds like you've been very busy this week. But how are you? Just look at them. How are you? Tell me about you. It changes the tone of the conversation. And some people, will get, what's it? But you know what my sense is? Because I do that a lot, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in human beings and how they are. You know what they often feel? This could be my own projection. I think they're very moved by being in the presence of somebody who wants to know them. Just close your eyes. How do you feel when you're in the presence of somebody who wants to know you as you are? You don't have to have a wall, you don't have to have defenses, you don't have to pretend, you don't have to worry about your self-image. How do you feel when you're in the presence of somebody who wants to know you as you are? Again, depending on how we've lived our life, it's same like the restlessness when you meditate. For some people, it can be uncomfortable but that's good because we can see, woo, I don't go there. You see some people, I don't go there. Well, that's interesting. Why don't we go to who we are? I mean, why do we always play acting? So, lazy days. I think in a certain way, meditation, people who bring meditation into their life are giving themselves an opportunity every day to step back from doing and to being. Right? You can take opportunities throughout the day to stop. Stop the doing and check in with your being. How am I? What's going on inside me? Right? In the evening, on weekends. Stop. if we endlessly, I often say to people, if you're driving somewhere and all of a sudden you realized, am I really going in the right direction, or am I, is this the right road or something, I'd say, well, don't keep driving. Pull over to the side of the road, stop, and check. Check the map, check this, don't keep going. But we keep going. So even though we may get little nagging things in the background about things not being right, things not working, something's bothering me, and something, we just keep going, don't we? We don't stop and take the time. Where am I? What's going on? And where do I want to go? So again, I'm really encouraging all of us as a community, people, members, non-members, to really find a day to be lazy and to kind of set the boundaries around, an unscripted day. Your daily planner? You know that one? You don't have that on that day. Wow, what am I going to do? That's good. It shows you, how addicted you are. Most addicts, if you suggest to them that they could live without their substance of choice, they look at you like you're nuts, or like that's torture, or could never happen. It's very common among addicts, this belief they can't live without their substance. They think that which is really a source of suffering to them is a source of happiness to them. It's all turned around. Now, we are lay people, so we don't live in the forest, So our lazy days, our just being days, are limited, right? Because we do have things to do, we have responsibilities. But we can all find a day, or a half day. Begin with a half day, and play with it. What could I do today that will nourish me? What if I just slowed down and just was present to the things I'm doing? Enjoying the taste of my food, enjoying cooking, enjoying smelling, enjoying people, looking at them. Having meaningful conversations, personal conversations with them, having fun with them, playing music with them, all kinds of good things. Enjoying life. So let me take questions or comments. Online, people can chat into Dion, he's up there. In the hall, just raise your hands, we have a mic. So people, any questions about any of this, or comments? Are you all doing lazy days already? This is all very familiar to you? Yes. Just wait, because the people online want to be able to hear.
I feel like
And your name is?
Andy.
Yes, Andy.
I feel like I typically, regularly, have lazy days that I engage with, like, here and there, but usually they're filled with, like, shame while they're happening.
Shame
And,
about what?
For, having that lazy day or taking that time, because I think just, of the programming of always having to do and stuff. So I really like the idea of having a lazy day that's, thought about, and like there's like a reason for it, and where you don't have to have shame for it.
That is really good. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head for Americans. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you'd be ashamed to tell your friends, what'd you do today? Nothing. I didn't do a damn thing today. You know? People think, wow, what a self-centered guy, you know? Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate that topic.
No, I'm glad you made that point, yeah. Thich Nhat Hanh was very clear on that. He wanted to rescue laziness. That's why he wanted to call himself his laziness. And, you know, he could have called it rest days, he could have called it nourishing days. He specifically chose lazy days because he wanted to elevate laziness. He felt it got a bad rap. Now again, this is not the laziness of torpor. This is not the laziness, I get things to do, but I'm lazy, right? This is not that laziness. This is a deeper kind of laziness, which we might say, you know, just being at ease. Have you ever watched animals? Anybody have a pet? Anybody have a dog or a cat? I mean, they're lazy. I mean, do you ever see what they do? Or all the animals in the wild, you know, all the lions and the tigers and the, you know. I mean, they spend a lot of their life doing what? What? Napping, relaxing, just kind of, you know, chilling. They're lazy. But when there's stuff to be done, they're on it. Right? So you go, wow, is that the natural state? You know? Energetic when there are things to be done, things to be taken care of. But, you know, being at ease, relaxing, enjoying life. I mean, those pictures of all those big apes, you know, just hanging around, picking lice off each other. You know. It's kind of sweet. Lazy, just hanging around, picking lice off each other. Yeah, I think we can learn a lot from our animals. I remember I had a friend once, he had a dog, and I forget what happened. For some reason, you know, he used to get up early in the morning, go to work. And I forget, for some reason he was sick or something happened. All of a sudden he was home for a couple of weeks, and he felt his dog resented him. He just picked it up. He said, it's like, what are you doing here? This is my time, just to, you know, chill away from you guys. And, you know. Comments or questions? I mean, does it speak to anybody? I mean, is it meaningful? Is it speak to yes, in the back?
I think we get a lot of, you know, mixed messages because like you said, there was a time when, I mean, I remember as a kid growing up in New York, there were blue laws. Nothing was open on a Sunday. And the day of rest thing. But you also get idle hands are the devil's, you know, and, you know, commerce, right? Time is money.
Time is money. Yep.
I'm thinking of the Lowe's hardware thing. It's how doers get things done. So good luck propagating the lazy days.
Yeah. So, yeah, but again, you know, one of the things I think that, you know, mindfulness gives us as human beings is the ability to be aware and to look at these messages and go, is that really healthy? You know? I mean, that's what it means to lead an examined life, to lead in a mindful life. You know, we're present to reality, and we have a way of you know, assessing it with good criteria. Right? So you're absolutely right. You know, there are these things, but anyhow, I mean, fortunately, there's no devil in Buddhism, so you don't have to worry about that one. No one's going to come in there. But again, I think the laziness that was, again, you know, we know that a lot of the people who founded this country, they came from cultures of certain kinds of outlook where, you know, just do. Active. Yeah, but we've been living that one now for several centuries. We've been living that out. And again, it's not like there's anything wrong with being productive and accomplishing things. What are we talking about? Balance. You know, you hear that a lot these days. What does everybody want in their life? Take a guess. Work-life balance. The trouble is, Angie and I were just on vacation for a week. Went to a Caribbean island. We were oddballs, you know why? We were just enjoying ourselves. Most people, what? 8 o'clock in the morning, they're out on a tour bus, right? No, nothing against tour buses, but you know what I mean? I mean, like, they do their vacations very busy, right? And then they come back exhausted from their vacations. You know, it's hard to be. Just to be in a beautiful place, just to enjoy yourself. You have nothing scheduled. Go on vacation, schedule nothing. Terrifying. Relax, be at ease. Some people that sounds great, some people go, yeah. Yeah, we've been conditioned. Yes.
Something with the lazy days that I've recognized through time is that this, you mentioned busyness, but when one kind of stops and begins to bring this into their life, you can see that there's at least for me, there was an idea or a feeling of rushing when they're busy. And that's, for me, what was that uncomfortable feeling. So lazy days is an opportunity to notice that, you know, and then to slow down. And as that mind begins to calm, like you shared, you realize, oh, you know, I can move about the day without this feeling of rushing in the mind and rushing. And it begins to, you know, pervade other parts of like your daily life, just taking a day. And then maybe half a day, or
Right.
So I find that always kind of moving a little slower, doing things more methodically, and just enjoying them versus rushing for me was a big shift. So I don't know if you can speak to what that feeling
that's
is.
excellent. And again, that's, you know, a lot of ties. Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching has been about that. I mean, the lazy day is like giving us one day a week to go off duty, to nourish and renew. But because of the nature of our lives, you know, our everyday lives, you know, work, family, other responsibility, to be able to do our work from a non-being. In Buddhism, we call that the non-action of action. And people hear these words and go, what does that mean? So Zen phrases. The non-action of action. There's action, but within that is non-action. Non-action is being. Non-action is ease. Non-action is non-attachment. So yeah, we can go through our day doing what needs to be done, and everybody is different what needs to be done, but without that tightness. You know what I'm talking about? Without that holding on. Without that sense of seriousness. You know, learning to work with some degree of lightness. You know, another reason for people to come here and join us for the work mornings is part of what we practice is that one can learn and be productive, but enjoy what one's doing. Enjoy work. Many of us think work is something you just got to do. It's the old daily grind, right? Right? How's your week going? Well, you know, it's over the hump. Friday's not too far away. Is that true? I mean, how many people live their life that way? You know, you know. But that's a sad way to live a life because we're alive those 5 days. there's somebody there at work. It's you. And don't you want to be, able to be happy or enjoy or be at ease? So, learning to work, learning to do with ease, is, I think, also very healthy for us as human beings. So good, I think we'll stop here. Thank you, everyone. Please enjoy your lazy days. Now, again, they're not going to happen by themselves. You're going to have to give some intentionality to make them happen. Thank you.